Hello, everyone. Welcome to another recorded discussion in Assessment and Learning 2. And for this video, we will be learning about portfolio and e-portfolio assessment. At the end of this two chapters from our learning material, you will be able to explain the concept, elements, and theoretical foundations of portfolio and e-portfolio assessment, differentiate the various types of portfolio, including electronic portfolio based on their purpose and structure, and also discuss the effective use of portfolios and e-portfolios as tool for learning and assessment. According to Helen Barrett, testing gives you a snapshot, portfolio give us a movie. This is a very strong foundation of why portfolio assessment is needed regardless of our specialization. This is because when we ask our students not just to compile, but to reflect on their learning with evidence, we are already implementing portfolio assessment. So, by definition, portfolio comes from the word portare, and folio means to carry a sheet of paper. It is a systematic and organized collection of students' work that demonstrate the student skills and accomplishment. That's according to Belgrade in 2008. Also, a portfolio must include student participation in selecting contents, the criteria for selection, the criteria for judging the merit and evidence of self-reflection. That's according to Paulson, 1991, which was also cited by Navarro et al. In 2013. According to Barton in 1987, the following are different types of evidence that we can ask our students to compile in their portfolios. First are the artifacts. The artifacts are documents, or it could be any product, that are produced for academic classroom work. Example of this are their formative assessments, like for example, the quiz, also the assignment, for example, in the case of language teachers, the essays that they produce. Second is the reproductions. Reproductions are special projects like the capstone, the student description of an interview, or it could be a transcription of what they have gathered or what they have, a survey, for example. So the idea of reproductions are those that are conducted outside the classroom work. Attestations, on the other hand, are produced for those persons who are in authority. An example are the evaluative notes we have for them during a performance task, our notes or qualitative comments we give to them during a process or product based output. Remember that attestations are provided to them. It could be an external rater or you yourself or us ourselves as their teachers. Productions, on the other hand, can also be included or which should also be seen in their portfolios. These are documents that the student himself produce. Examples are it could include the goal statement, the reflections, and the captions for each output. Now, let's proceed to the different types of portfolio. We have assessment portfolio, development or growth portfolio, showcase or best portfolio. This type is according to the function, distinct function of each portfolio. So we can ask our students to produce an assessment portfolio if we intend that the student will document all the formative assessments we have done with them, including the summative ones, in the classroom setup. The results of this assessment portfolio will inform both the student and the learner, both the student and the teacher, to what extent we were able to accomplish the learning outcomes for each specific timeline. A good example of this is during our basic education experience, when our teacher would ask us to compile all the outputs we have from quizzes to summative assessment or summative test we have. That's a good example of an assessment portfolio. Development or growth portfolio, from its word, it is where it consists of student work over an extended time frame. It could be throughout the quarter, or it could also be throughout the school year. Remember that the word developmental or development growth or the growth means there should be an evidence of those at least change or develop skilled or evidence over time. For example, in the case of improving the writing skills of our elementary learners, when we ask for them to provide a developmental portfolio, we ask them to provide a envelope in which they can exert all excerpts of how they were able to improve their writing skills. In secondary level, this is where we ask, for example, in mathematics, the concept of practice sets, which we provide our feedback to them. Remember that there can only be an evidence of learning when there is an output that we provide enough feedback. So the word there is, it involves comment from us, and the learner were able to improve those comments in that portfolio. Now, best or showcase portfolio, on the other hand, is where the student present his or her most outstanding work. In most cases, these portfolio assessments are reflected on, for example, in an exhibit, or an example would be in a final output, such as, for example, the final output we ask for them to submit in the final grading. It could also be called display, for which the learner will be able to pick his or her best output. Remember this, that we use assessment portfolio to diagnose. We use developmental portfolio to document, and we use showcase portfolio to celebrate learning progress. Now, these are the essential elements of portfolio that we should be asking our students to comply, or at least a component of our assessment portfolio. First, it should have a cover letter. It should inform us what is all about the author, could be the learner himself or herself, and what is the portfolio all about. There should also be a presence of table of contents with numbered pages for us not to have confusion when looking for the specific evidence. Entries, this could be both at student student evidences or his or her best choice. So remember that dates also are important, since it would inform us as well when did that specific evidence were compiled. It could also include the draft, the written products, the revised revisions, and so on and so forth. And of course, there should always be reflection included in it. When we ask them to compile their portfolio or to submit their portfolio assessment, we ask them to reflect on what have they learned, how will they do on that specific learning outcome, or even on the entire school year learning progress. For best or display, there should be a justification of the learner why they were able to pick that as their best choice. And also, they can be able to identify, or they should be able to identify in which item or in which evidence they say they have improved, and also they they can identify what are the problem areas they can still improve. Now, here are the stages of implementing portfolio assessment. The real rationale is that we don't ask this type of assessment at the end of the quarter or at the end of the school year. We always start with informing them the idea of the portfolio. We identify what are the learning outcomes in which we're going to ask the student to have a portfolio assessment. Please also consider that this type of portfolio assessment should be coordinated with them before uh, the learning process, or even before. It should be during the class orientation. So again, first is we identify the learning outcomes that we are going to use for the portfolio assessment. We introduce them the idea of portfolio assessment. We specify what content that should be put inside the portfolio. Are we going to include the quizzes if it is developmental, or if it is assessment? Are we going to include their drafts, their improved outputs if it is developmental, or are they going to just focus on best output? We should also give them clear guidelines, mechanics on how they will be able to present their portfolio, or if there will be a presentation. Um, Stage 5 is that we should improve the key officials and parents and other stakeholders. So for secondary level, a good example of this is for the research output. Well, research output is actually considered as portfolio assessment because it is sometimes, if it is an exhibit, it is called display, when the student will be transcribing their, or presenting their answers, their reports, or what have they learned in their research. But in most cases, when we ask them to compile, to improve, that's actually a developmental assessment as well. So we improve our direct heads that you will, this will be the flow, this will be the timeline of our research subject. Also, we inform them with if there will be necessary fees that the student will be paying, and as well as when will it be the presentation of the results, and of course the development of the portfolio. So remember what type of portfolio are we asking them would also be included in, should also be considered in the development of the portfolio. So from time to time, the idea of during the development of the portfolio, from time to time we ask them to identify the evidences that they can put inside their portfolio assessment. And we are to guide them as to what they will be including and what they should not include, depending on the purpose of the portfolio assessment. Now, let us proceed to e-portfolio as an assessment tool and as a communication medium. Remember that this is not, we are already in a 21st century classroom, which we also considered the hybrid setup, the online setup, sometimes the blended setup. And when we ask an e-portfolio, that means we are embracing a digitalized type of portfolio assessment. Now, it is also called as communication medium because for us teachers, it we will be able to be communicated digitally with what the students were able to compile. And sometimes it gives us another benefit that we don't have to compile all the folders in our faculty. We can just have it in, for example, in a Google Drive or in a learning management system we use depending on our institution. Now, an e-portfolio is a digital collection of all those what we have discussed earlier as portfolio assessment. This include essays, posters, photographs, videos, and artwork created by students. A good example of e-portfolio as well, although in words, are again the developing research output of our students. Also, an academic e-portfolio can capture the aspect of the student's life, such as the experiences. The extracurricular activities may also be included. And in other words, e-portfolio documents makes visible learning. According to Baskin, these are the theories that govern the implementation of e-portfolio. According to Baskin, e-portfolio is a way to generate learning as well as to document learning. Also, in the point of view of the constructivist, e-portfolio will fall under this implementation. The student will be able to create, to construct their own knowledge about it. Of course, also, according to Bass and Anon, using e-portfolio make learning visible. And to the different authors such as Tosh, Penelight, Fleming, and Haywood in 2005, it fosters student activity. First and foremost, because they have the choice, guided with what type of purpose or what purpose of assessment, e-portfolio assessment we're asking for them. They have the choice to compile. They have the choice to what would be the background, what would be the design, how they should be compiling their evidences. So that's why it fosters student activity. It also motivates them to engage on that assessment. These are the different types of e-portfolio. This is according to how large the scope is. For example, if it is a school-centered e-portfolio, then that means we are asking for our students to produce a summative assessment. That means to say it's assessment of learning type of e-portfolio. And also, if we're asking our student to produce a learner-centered e-portfolio, that means we are asking a formative assessment, or those are assessment for learning. There are also kinds of different portfolio according to why it is collected. Again, assessment, e-portfolio are could be for school, and the goal is to support institutional outcomes or assessment, not just institutional outcomes, but also learning outcomes. Learning e-portfolio are where the audience is the student themselves. The goal is again to examine and reflect their own learning. And of course, career or transfer e-portfolio, which is just similar to display or best display or best output type of portfolio, in which the student will be able to use it based from their could be a good ways of presenting their best output for the next educational level they can have. Good is one example is, for example, they're applying for scholarships. Those best outputs that they have can be considerations for those. Example would be the OST and different entities that ask for student best output as consideration in finding a scholarship grant. And these are the best practices we can use in e-portfolio implementation. First is we explain to them what are the benefits of e-portfolio. The good benefit is that they don't have to buy folders, they don't have to buy bond papers. They just have to have it in their phone, edit it. Could be in a website, could be a Google site, it could be a Canva output or whatsoever. Also, the same with implementation of portfolio assessment or traditional portfolio assessment. We establish what are the clear expectations. We explain to them what are they expected to produce, and then of course also provide numerous examples of successful e-portfolio. Scaffold student learning, for example, in the case of if we're asking for our students to produce a academic research output, we always scaffold them as to what part they should be improving, and so on and so forth. And of course, walk the talk. We gave our good example. We gave a e-portfolio for our example. In fact, during in the next meeting that we will have, I will be providing my own e-portfolio in a way that you can create your own e-portfolio also. Tie e-portfolio to assessment because that's the main purpose of having portfolio assessment. It is to reflect on their learning progress and of course make it social. They can link their e-portfolio to their different social medias, or also they can link it to the institutional LMS in a way that it would encourage engagement with not just with themselves but also could be in the with other students. Now, include reflections because it is not just a compilation but also a reflection of the learning progress. When we ask our students to, regardless if it is traditional or digital portfolio, we always include reflections. Reflections can be guided in a way that they would know what they will be explaining, or they can just present their own experience, or they can just put into their own words their own experience in the making of a portfolio. So, example would be accompanied by reflection composed by the student. It should be by the student, not any AI generative output or website, but it should be by the student. And that's all for this type of assessment. I hope that this will be a good material, enough material for you to be able to study for the semifinal exam. Thank you, everyone.